So today, we're delving into the fascinating realm of historical linguistics, focusing on something known as Weis's law. This term might sound a bit niche, but it ties directly to how languages evolve and how we understand their shared ancestry. To kick us off, how would you explain Weis's law in simple terms for listeners who might be new to this subject?
Sure, let's break it down. Weis's law is a sound change that occurred in the ancient, reconstructed Proto-Indo-European language. Essentially, it refers to how certain consonants, specifically the ones called palatovelars, lost a key feature of their pronunciation, their palatal quality, when they were followed by the R sound. This change blurred the distinction between palatovelar and plain velar consonants in some contexts.
All right, so these palatovelars. We're talking about sounds that involve the tongue and areas in the mouth like the hard and soft palates. Could you give an example of how this change might have worked?
Absolutely. Let's take the Proto-Indo-European consonants. These are the palatovelars. When these were followed by R, they shifted to become indistinguishable from K, G, and Ja, the plain velars. A simple example from a linguistic reconstruction would be a word where sh precedes R in its root. Over time, you'd see it lose its palatal element, aligning more closely with plain velars in the derived languages.
Interesting. Now, I've heard that this sound change is particularly noticeable in some branches of the Indo-European languages, like the satem languages. Why is that?
Great question. Satem languages, which include branches like Indo-Iranian and Balto-Slavic, are known for transforming palatovelars into sibilant sounds, like S or ish, through a process known as assimilation. But where Weis's law comes into play is in explaining exceptions to this pattern. Specifically, it accounts for instances where you don't see the palatovelars becoming sibilants because of this depalatalization before R star.
So this law helps make sense of anomalies in how these languages evolved. Does this also connect to the famous centum-satem divide in Indo-European linguistics?
It does connect. The centum-satem division is based on how these palatovelar sounds developed over time. In centum languages, these sounds merged with plain velars, while in satem languages they usually became sibilants. Weis's law suggests that this depalatalization happened before the broader centum-satem split, considering the relative chronology of Proto-Indo-European sound changes.
Speaking of chronology, the timeline for all of this seems complex. Did the depalatalization described by Weis's law happen early in Proto-Indo-European history?
Yes, it likely happened early. Some scholars argue it occurred after the split of the Anatolian languages, which are the oldest offshoot from Proto-Indo-European, but before the centum-satem split. This places it roughly 4,000 to 3,000 years BCE. The timeline is supported by how these sound changes align with other linguistic developments, such as shifts in vowel placements.
What I find particularly intriguing is the role this rule plays in reconstructing ancient languages. Since we can't hear Proto-Indo-European, how do linguists use rules like Weis's law to piece together its history?
It's all about comparing cognates, the words that are related across different languages, and looking for systematic sound correspondences. When these patterns don't fit the usual rules, linguists use sound laws like Weis's law to explain those discrepancies. It helps us refine the reconstructed proto-language and understand how its descendants diverged.
That makes sense. But were there exceptions to Weis's law? Did we find cases where it didn't quite hold up?
There were exceptions, but many can be explained. For example, if a palatovelar and R were separated by a morpheme boundary, the palatovelar's original features might be restored because of analogy with related words. Or if there was an I following the R, the I might protect the palatal quality. These instances don't contradict the law, but instead highlight the complexities of language evolution.
It's amazing how detailed linguistic analysis can get. Before we wrap up, let's touch on the man behind the law, Oskar Weise. Why is he significant in this field?
Oskar Weise laid the groundwork for this theory back in 1881, when he noticed oddities in the relationships between Ancient Greek and Sanskrit. His observations were key to resolving these lexical puzzles, even if his work went unappreciated for a while. More recent research, like that by Alwyn Cloakhorst, revived interest in Weise's contributions and expanded on them to fit modern linguistic understanding.
That's fantastic. It really highlights how linguistic theories, even those produced centuries ago, can evolve themselves with ongoing study. So today we've learned about the intricacies of sound laws, the evolution of Proto-Indo-European, and how rules like Weise's law provide clarity to ancient language puzzles. Thanks for guiding us through this fascinating topic.
Thank you for diving into it with such interest. It's always fun to explore how these ancient sound shifts laid the foundation for so many of our modern languages.